everybody. Welcome to the Talking Disney Classics podcast, and the show where we like to talk about the Disney canon and all the fun stuff that is surrounding that. And today we have a very special episode for you. We have Micah Hirsh here on the podcast to talk about his new documentary, Beware the Groove, about Emperor's New Groove. So we're going to talk a lot about Emperor's New Groove, about the documentary, and just all things Disney. And I'm film critic Rachel Stanford's here.
Hey, how's it going?
Yes, we're doing good. And we have Micah here. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm always happy to come on podcasts, honestly.
Yeah. So why don't you introduce yourself to our audience? Tell us a little about you.
Okay. My name is Micah Hirsh. I'm an animator on YouTube on Fireblast Studios, but more relevant to this, I host the podcast, The Emperor's New Podcast, which is all about the Emperor's New Groove franchise. And I just released on YouTube my documentary, which we're going to talk about some today, Beware the Groove, the Making of a Cult Classic, on YouTube.
Yeah. Well, very fun. We're excited to talk about that.
I know. I was so stoked.
Yeah. But before we dive in, I thought it would be fun to just kind of talk a little bit about the movie and maybe our experiences when we saw it, why we think it stands out, things like that.
Yeah.
And then we'll dive into the documentary and that process for you and everything like that. But for you, when did you first see Emperor's New Groove?
I first saw it about right after it came out on video. We rented it. As a kid, I liked it. And occasionally I would watch it on TV too. But wasn't until like the 2010s that like I started getting up late at night to watch the TV show, and then the TV show made me realize, yeah, I should probably revisit the movie this is based on. So I revisited the movie, and I realized the movie is just like this amazing thing.
Mm-hmm.
As a teenager, I realized this. So from that, then this was like, so yeah, like 2010 or so. So for like the past 13 years, this has been like my obsession, basically.
Well, that's really interesting because it did seem like the documentary is almost more about the show than the movie, which is.
I tried to have it be like sort of half and half a little bit, with a little bit of Bronx New Groove in the middle.
Yeah.
Because I really want, I guess this is getting into the documentary, which we maybe want to get into later, but if you want me to stop and talk about this later, let me know, okay?
Yeah, no, it's fine. I mean, I had never even heard of the show before watching the documentary, so you were one up on me there. But Stanford, what about you? When did you first see Emperor's New Groove?
So I saw Emperor's New Groove opening weekend in December of 2000 when it first came out in theaters, and just instantly loved it. And frankly was shocked, I guess is the right word, that it was actually from Disney because I mean, it had the quality animation and some of the heartwarming stuff, but it was so irreverent and just so funny. I just remember just absolutely laughing my head off. It was so great. And it's just one I've loved ever since. It's
interesting because Shrek gets all the credit for that irreverent tone and parody, kind of making fun of the tropes and everything. But Emperor's New Groove really did it the year before.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. But it doesn't get that same credit. Were you nervous about it? Because had you heard about all this back and forth and changes and everything?
I heard some, because I just remember seeing stuff about Kingdom of the Sun. Of course, I wasn't following stuff as closely. And also, the media world was different, I mean, we had the internet, but it wasn't anything like, what we've got today. It was pre-Facebook and social media. And so it wasn't like we were able to get just stuff instantly and in your face. So I guess, I didn't go in there questioning it. I just thought, well, this looks like it's a bit different than what I remember reading Empire of the Sun to be. And I knew that, Sting had been involved, all of Phil Collins' involvement, in Tarzan and whatnot. But so I was maybe a little disappointed that some of the Sting stuff had gotten pulled. But boy, once I saw the movie, I just forgot, all about it. I just enjoyed just the absolute wackiness and delight of the film.
Yeah, it's an interesting one for me because I was a sophomore in college when it came out, and I was just like, what? He turns into a llama? I don't even want to see that. That sounds really weird. And so I didn't see it at first, but then I was working as a teaching assistant for Dr. David Bone at BYU, and he had these different projects to immerse you in the community that were great. And it was it was called Theories of Human Freedom, this class where you kind of, it was a philosophy class, and one of the options for community outreach was to work with what were known as the Lost Boys of Sudan. They were refugees that came over from Sudan, and they were great, but they were given like 3 months to be self-sufficient from their refugee status, which is like kind of crazy when you think about it. And anyway, so we were there to kind of help them try to help them get jobs, try to help do what we could. And we had a lot of fun with them. And there was a, what did they call it? Like a fall fling or something like that. I think that's what they called it on campus. So we were taking them to the different activities that they had. And one of the options was to go see Emperor's New Groove at the varsity there at BYU. And I was like, whatever. I guess we'll go see it. And I went and saw it with the Lost Boys of Sudan. And
oh my goodness, Rachel.
And I was like, this is hilarious. I love this movie. And we were all laughing and everything. And so anyway, it was very memorable to me. And it was just so much better than I thought it was going to be, and ended up really enjoying it. And it was kind of the last movie from Disney that I enjoyed from Disney proper. From that point, it was a while. Now I've just grown to appreciate movies like Lilo and Stitch and things like that. But at the time, I didn't enjoy that movie, and so it wasn't until Tangled, I think, honestly, until there was another movie from Disney proper that I loved.
Yeah.
So it's kind of memorable in that way for me as well.
Yeah.
Man.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, do you have a favorite part or most memorable part of the movie for you?
Well, that's difficult because I just think the entire movie's great. But one scene I think in particular that's a really good, if you want to show people like an example of the kind of humor, is the scene at the restaurant.
Yeah.
Especially if you want to get a sense of the movie's timing and stuff.
Yeah.
That scene's really good.
Yeah. Especially all the diner talk, and then the birthday is hilarious. You didn't tell me it was your birthday.
It's so
and
funny.
All the near misses.
Yes, it's just
very 40s style humor.
Yeah, my favorite is it's probably, I think, the funniest moment in all of Disney. It's certainly up there. It would be in my top 5. Is a wrong lever.
Yeah.
Why do we even have that lever?
Lever. Often regarded by many as because it's one of the few that's just purely a straight comedy, the funniest of the Disney animated canon, by many people, especially now. That has gotten a bit of a following.
I mean, trying to think of what else would even be in kind of competition. Maybe Robin Hood. Robin Hood's pretty slapsticky, especially the first half, and then it becomes the prison break.
The 2 movies I can think of are Aladdin and Hercules.
Hercules.
A lot of Aladdin's cartooniness comes from the genie specifically, and not just one character. Hercules has this sort of anachronisms, but it also hasn't quite figured out how to make the drama only there so that it serves the narrative and not feel inconsistent with the rest of the movie, basically.
Yeah, and you can see that they were trying to replicate a lot of this movie in Chicken Little, even obviously with the same director. But it just almost none of the jokes really work in that one.
Yeah, and that was another one that went through a drastic change, but this time it was Mark Dindal's story that got changed, but he still remained on as director, basically. I think it was about Chicken Little was a girl, and Michael Eisner was like, people can't relate to girls, and girls don't get bullied enough. We need to change them to a boy. That was one thing that changed. And I think they were going to like a school to learn about being more confident or something, but the school was run by wolves who were in literal wolves in sheep's clothing. And then they made it about aliens or something for some reason.
Yeah. Well,
and Chicken Little. Oh, what a mess.
I think that Zootopia has quite a few gags.
Yeah.
I mean, the mafia.
2010s feels like a good, like, the perfect sort of meeting point between the Renaissance and the post-Renaissance type of movie.
Yeah. I love that whole Godfather send up. I mean, I don't think that kids would really get it, but I still think they'd laugh.
So funny. I love it too. And that's another one of those moments where I think, I can't believe this isn't a Disney movie, but it works. You know?
Yeah. Let it go. Well, what about you? What's your favorite, Stanford? Your favorite moment in Emperor's New Groove?
It's hard to pick. I think one that I remember quoting a lot with my friends was when Cusco heads off into the jungle alone as a llama. And there's that pack of sleeping jaguars, but he runs into Bucky the squirrel, and anyway, and then Bucky like pulls out that balloon, and then he's getting ready to pop.
And it just comes out of nowhere.
It's just so random.
In Hammer's face.
And I just love Bucky's squirrel voice, you know. and
the needles grow on the trees.
Yes.
Take one of the needles off the trees to pop the balloon.
Yeah, that was one of my favorites. And then how they kind of repeat the joke at the very end of the movie. I mean, you know, when Kronk is talking squirrel. Anyway, I love it.
Bucky, you can really like, and you can see this throughout the movie, but especially in Bucky the Squirrel and his expressions, you can see a lot of the Chuck Jones influence there.
He's like straight out, isn't he? I'm a Chuck Jones cartoon, and I just love it.
Another favorite for me is when Yzma drinks the potion and becomes a cat, and there's like, my voice.
And I love that scene because it's a subversion of like a Disney trope, basically, where the villain turns into a big scary monster, but instead,
this little pink cat.
And then they also subvert like her. Instead of falling to her death, a trampoline saves her at the last minute. I remember, and this isn't in the documentary, but when I was interviewing, I think maybe it was Nick Raniere for the documentary, one of the things that that wasn't relevant enough, so I didn't make it in the documentary, that he said was at one point, I think they were planning to have like all the dead Disney villains at the bottom of the tower that had fallen to their death.
Oh, wow.
I'm not sure if that would have been a little too far or not, but
yeah, that would have been a little dark.
Dark, but funny.
Yeah, there's other things that stand out. I mean, I think it's the only animated film I can think of that has a pregnant woman, an awesome
certainly
pregnant woman.
First, especially for Disney. It's definitely the first one.
Yeah.
I think we might briefly see later on, again, it's the first, Rapunzel's mother being pregnant with her very, very, very briefly.
Oh, yeah, just for a second.
Born.
Oh, yeah, when she's sick.
Yeah.
And then I just watched it. Lady and the Tramp. Darling, but you never see the baby bump. You know, you just if I'm not mistaken, she's just like knitting baby booties and getting talent.
And she's barely a character, really.
Yeah, just more in the shadows.
It's just right. And
that movie's
never
much more about
show her full body either, right? I mean, it's just. You just see little parts of her face and whatnot.
Even like, and Cheetah's not a main character in the movie, but she is very fleshed out, and her moments that she is in the movie are really well thought out.
Oh, she's such. I think she's such a good
well
character.
voice acted by Wendy Malick.
Wendy Malick, yeah.
Yeah. I like the fact that she's not some like precious pregnant woman. A lot of times in all kinds of movies and shows, it's like, oh, we got to treat her with, kid gloves kind of a thing because she's pregnant, right?
Yeah.
And with her, she's just really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, all the characters are cool. I mean, I'm sure they like sort of the buddy element with Cusco and Pacha is, something we've seen a lot, but I think it's executed really well. It's a nice story of friendship.
Well, that's the amazing thing about Emperor's New Groove is it is everything about it to some extent has already been done, but the way they do it is so funny and clever and creative, like putting spins on like the things. Because like the idea of a jerk turning into not a jerk is an ancient plot. It's been done many times before, but this does it's a unique approach to it, and it's the first time, like not the first time a Disney movie has done something like that, but the first time they really leaned into making him just like this despicable, almost like a villain protagonist at the beginning, where he's like destroying people's homes and gloating about it. This is like don't think a Disney movie has really done quite that same level of thing since either.
I felt that and again, the more I've learned about the history of the production and your documentary, I can't wait to dive into some of the stuff. But I mean, some of the stuff that I knew, seeing it, I felt like it was like the Phoenix.
Sorry.
No, please. Sorry. Like the Phoenix coming out of the ashes, this just out of this plot that just, I guess, that they can never make work. Came this crazy movie, but it's such a delight. And even the Sting songs, I think, are wonderful. I particularly love, I love Perfect World at the beginning, but I really love My Funny Friend and Me, that plays over the end credits, because even Sting, who I think really kind of got shafted throughout this, through this process, came up with an absolutely fantastic song, so they really, they turned lemons into lemonade and just made this absolutely delightful
lemonade.
Well, and I remember hearing an interview, I think it was with Jennifer Lee, about Frozen and all the changes that movie underwent. I think it was her who said that that's really not that uncommon for, these animated movies take so long to make, and the director of the sequel kind of elaborated on this in the documentary, but they just have so much time that it's not that uncommon for these kind of major facelifts to happen on these movies. That, like, I think that for the tone to so radically change and become like such a different movie is maybe unusual for Emperor's New Groove. But I think if we went back through most of our favorites, they have been changed quite a bit as the stories have evolved.
Yeah, I know Tangled went through a big overhaul. It was going to, and it, as it is, it's a very funny movie, but it was originally going to be much more leaning into like almost like a Shrek knockoff kind of thing. And they sort of tweaked it so it was sort of like basically like a Princess movie meets Emperor's New Groove kind of humor.
And Toy Story famously with
Toy Story famously
and Toy Story 2.
And there's been debates for a long time on the internet if Black Friday, who's worse, Cusco at the beginning of The Emperor's New Groove or Black Friday Woody.
And Toy Story 2 was basically completely overhauled. And they had to make it pretty quick. So it's an interesting thing, how these movies evolve. So what was your process? You do this podcast, right? And every week, do you, like, how does your podcast kind of work? I know it's about the movie, but do you take like a different character or different, how do you do that?
Well, it alternates. So it started with a review of the movie was the very first episode. From there, I just reviewed all the it's ancillary, everything that came after or was attached to me. So I reviewed the Sweatbox, I reviewed the video game, I reviewed Gronk's New Groove, and I've been lately reviewing every episode of the TV show. But in between that, I also interview people, and some of those interviews from the podcast actually made it into the film and excerpts from them. Um, that's basically what I do, and I do it. I don't really have a solid schedule because I am I'm not good with schedules. Basically, like if I have a meeting or like if I'm going on someone else's podcast, I can set up an appointment for that. But like to stick to like a weekly or monthly exact schedule, I'm not very good at.
Sure.
So I mostly post when I'm able to, and when I've just recorded something. I post an episode, and it's very, like I'd say, it's very kind of, I don't know if amateur is the right word. It's very raw. I don't do a whole lot of editing unless someone specifically requests I edit something. Just because I find the process of editing audio a bit stressful, and that's not what I am going for with the podcast. It's mostly I want to do this for fun and the love of the thing and not stress myself out.
Yeah, it can be stressful. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But Stanford, had you ever heard of this TV show? I had never.
Yeah, I
never
had
heard of it.
Heard of the TV show, and then of course Kronk's New Groove too. I had, and I think it's one of the few I would categorize it in the cheapquels era, you know, but I think it's still one that I actually watched, because most of the cheapquels I refuse to watch. I thought maybe they're not going to kill Kronk as much as they, Cinderella 2 or whatever,
The movie does kind of paint like Kronk's New Groove as well. It was poorly received, but I did enjoy it. I think I like the TV show a little bit better. Probably because it lasted longer, so they had more time to figure out what exactly they were doing. Whereas, Kronk's New Groove was a movie that was produced very quickly. And it didn't have all the experience, I guess, that everyone working on Emperor had by the time the movie had switched to a different movie and they had to finish that one in a year.
Are you a fan of Rachel's reviews? Do you look forward to Family Movie Night, Female Film Critics panels, or the Talking Disney podcast? If so, please consider supporting the podcast by becoming a patron. As a patron, you get to access monthly events such as the watch-alongs and Q&As, where you get to talk to stars and find out the behind the scenes of the movie making industry. And you can pick what I review for Family Movie Night, or even become a guest on the podcast. Podcasts and YouTube channels are expensive, and I really, really could use your help. I would so appreciate it. You also get to be a member of the Facebook group where we talk about all the films that we're seeing, and we have so much fun. Go to patreon.com/Hallmarkies and select one of the Rachel's fan tiers. That's patreon.com/Hallmarkies. Yeah. It's interesting you did an episode on your podcast on the Sweatbox, because I think that's one of those things that like sounds really juicy and really fun. But in reality, it's pretty boring. Like, it should be better
I
than
like the
this.
Sweatbox, but that was actually like, I wanted to avoid redoing the Sweatbox because the Sweatbox already exists.
Right.
So I didn't want to, even though I use a lot of the footage in the documentary, I didn't want to feel too redundant. Which is another reason why a lot of a good chunk of the third act is dedicated to the TV series as well, is because I didn't want to, a lot of people already know this information. So I mostly am just like reevaluating what they know, restating what they know, doing it a bit more irreverent and silly than the Sweatbox did, and then covering everything after that.
Yeah.
That the Sweatbox didn't cover because it hadn't happened yet.
Yeah, I guess you're expecting it to have a little bit more teeth because it's directed by Sting's wife. So you think, oh, this is going to be a little bit juicier than it is, but it's really pretty by the numbers.
Yeah. It's, a lot of people like, and I guess Disney apparently, they're perfectly fine with people using clips of it on YouTube, and I don't think I think it's on the Internet Archive, and I don't think they've taken it down from that. But for a while, it was on YouTube and it got removed. Are worried that it like paints them in a negative light, and I don't think it. I think it's a pretty neutral movie.
Yeah, I agree.
Honestly, I think it just paints them as, and I don't want to like come off as like, oh, I'm defending the Hollywood executives all the time, because I know that they make choices that are not great. But in this case, it seemed like a lot of their choices were based on wanting the movie to be good and not just make money off of it.
Yeah, it does feel kind of ordinary, and you're just, at least why going into it, I'm like, ooh, this is going to be directed by Sting's wife. This is going to be like a juicy documentary.
Yeah.
And it was really just kind of like, here's what's happened next.
Yeah, it was really just like it was just supposed to be an actual making of documentary.
Yeah.
Then things changed halfway through. So basically, the kind of the movie changed along with it in a way halfway through, to become more of this documentation of the struggles that went into making this thing. Because even though it doesn't really paint Disney in a negative light, it definitely paints it as a struggle. So really, the documentary just makes me want to make more movies, honestly.
Yeah, which
it makes it look like fun, even if it doesn't even if you have to do all these changes, it still looks like a fun process to me.
Do you agree, Stanford, on that, on the Sweatbox?
Yeah, and I'm trying to think actually if I have seen the Sweatbox all the way through. If I've only seen,
well, it is longer than the Emperor's
parts of it.
So
and I wonder if part of that was because I was thinking, oh, Disney doesn't want to see us to see it. Should I honor that, or more just like, no, I want to know the behind the kind of the salacious behind the scenes. But from just like what your reports, what you just said, that it's kind of boring. So yeah. And I think too, ultimately, I mean, I really am a big fan of Sting's and Sting's music, and I mostly just wanted to see more of his songs come to light, as I had previously mentioned. I know a couple of them got put onto the soundtrack, the official soundtrack.
Well, the one that I really think is the one that I really wish they could have found a way to put it in a movie somehow, made it onto the soundtrack, which is Ethan's song.
Yeah.
Just in general, just villain songs are usually pretty good.
Yeah, that is it. Snuff Out the Light, or I can't remember
the plot. The thing is, the Simpsons did it. The Simpsons did a whole episode where Burns was trying to block out the sun.
Oh yeah.
Wouldn't it be funny if it turned out that was the real reason they changed it to what we got, was because they realized the Simpsons already did that part?
The Simpsons did it.
I think they did a Prince and the Pauper parody too on the Simpsons. So they did both of them. The Simpsons already did the entire plot of the movie, so they had to. As far as I know, no one's been turned into a llama on the Simpsons.
Had to change it.
Well, now if we're taking off anything that Simpsons has done, the list isn't long.
This was the 90s, like the mid 90s. Simpsons was in its prime. They hadn't quite gotten to the point where they've done so much that they were repeating themselves yet.
Well, the Simpsons, it's really kind of like 4 or 5 shows. It's been around so long that it's gone through like eras.
Yeah.
But what do you think of Mark Dindal's? I mean, we talked a little about Chicken Little, but with Cats Don't Dance, what do you think of that?
That wasn't my last episode of the podcast. My last episode of the podcast was me shamelessly promoting my documentary. The episode before that was on Cats Don't Dance, because it was free on YouTube, and it was Mark Dindal's directorial feature debut. And I knew I was going to review it at some point, and since it was free on YouTube, at least at the time, I don't know if it still is, I thought that would make it easier, at least for me. I think my other guests actually own it, but you can see a lot of where the groovisms, I guess, come from in Cats Don't Dance. A lot of the Looney Tune inspiration, and they feel like very companion, like contrasting movies in terms of tone. They're both very wacky, very Looney Tuny, but the main characters are like complete opposites. in Cats Don't Dance versus The Emperor's New Groove. In Cats Don't Dance, the main character is this wide-eyed idealist who is like super nice, and in Emperor's New Groove, it's this starky, cynical, jerk. So it's fun. It was fun comparing and contrasting those two, and seeing like how one influenced the other and how different they are as well.
Yeah, we did that for obscure animation years ago, and I love it. I think it's so good.
I think it's a fun movie too, and I think very representative of Mark Dindal's style.
Yeah.
When it's successful.
I'm cautiously optimistic for Garfield just because it has a cat in it, honestly. And Cats Don't Dance I don't think there were, at least if there were cats in Chicken Little, they weren't the focus. But both Cats Don't Dance and Emperor's New Groove have a cat, at least as a main character at some point is the cat.
So it's a
and
good
the Emperor's New
omen.
Groove has like he's turning into the cat isn't the only cat in the Emperor's New Groove. There's like foreshadowing throughout the movie with references to cats and stuff as well.
Yeah, if people don't know, Mark Dindal is directing the upcoming Garfield movie in next year.
And if anyone can get a good voice acting performance out of Chris Pratt, it's the guy.
Chris Pratt.
It's the guy who got a good voice acting performance out of David Spade.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't even know how good of like a performance it is out of David Spade. It's literally just him talking his normal voice.
Yeah, but like, well, you saw, and it was mentioned in the documentary that like when he was first doing it, the emotion wasn't there. They had to film him basically. To get the emotion they wanted. I don't know if like because he's done a few other voice work stuff since then. I don't know if it's changed, if how he performs has changed since then or not. But at the time, they were having trouble getting because there's that one scene where he's like apologizing to Pacha without actually saying he's apologizing because that's his character. And they weren't getting the right. It felt phoned in, so they got a camera crew to come in and say they were filming him for press, basically, and that's how they got what ended up in the movie.
Yeah. So one of the interesting interviews that you had was with Nick Ramiri.
Yes.
And so what was that kind of like, getting to talk to him? And I thought it was very interesting that this opening dance number, I never would have thought it was so complicated, but it was interesting to hear him talk about that.
Animation, especially Disney, if you're Disney, you have to be the best, basically. So it's very, I don't think I could do it even as an animator because there's so much thought goes into it. I think I would get overwhelmed. But yeah, when a character moves, basically you want to have, if they have cloth or hair or something, you want to try to have it react as if hair or cloth would react in real life, where it like lags behind a bit and then catches up and maybe goes a little bit past where it's supposed to go and then settles. That was a lot of fun, that interview.
Yeah. I thought that was interesting, and that I also thought it was interesting when you were talking with Bob Bergen, I think it was, who I didn't realize that they literally made up a language for the squirrel.
Yeah, they said that they want the Kronk go squeak squeaking, and then he said, "Oh, so you want me to go squeak squeaking?" And say, "No, he says squeak squeaking. You have to invent a new language for this character." And then the story, which I don't want to spoil it because it's in the movie, of how Bucky ended up being like and stuff in the movie is told, and I animated to a little bit to that as well.
Yeah, they even had it all written out, the whole language of the squeaking.
I also used a lot of random stock footage just to illustrate stuff. So like when he's saying we have to invent a language, I have a person's handwriting on our chalkboard.
Right. Yeah.
He talks about how like the studio's park-like, so I just have footage of grass. None of this other than the interviews which were shot over Zoom, none of this is actually new footage that was shot by me.
That was one of the questions I wanted to ask you, Mike. How did
And
you
there was
go
animation.
about?
I did some animation in it.
Okay, how did you go about curating all those interviews?
I asked, basically.
Yeah. Okay. Because they were great. I mean, I just thought, holy smokes, Micah got a lot of stuff, you know.
Bob Bergen, JP Manu, Tony Bancroft, Stevie Wormers, Wendy Grieve, all of those were already done for the podcast, so I just took clips from those. The new ones, all the other ones, I don't think I left any out, were done especially for the documentary.
Well, and it was
I
neat that
also
you
have excerpts from some of my friends' podcasts talking about the movie and the show a little bit as well.
It was neat that you had Steven Anderson on, because I actually have interviewed him.
Yeah.
For Monsters at Work.
Yeah.
I interviewed him before that, and he was super nice. So
that was actually how I was able to get through him was how I was able to get Bob Scanaway an interview with him, because he was the executive producer of Monsters at Work.
Oh, nice.
Because I think he just executive produced like almost all the shows that are based on movies. Yeah, like House of Mouse, Timon and Pumbaa, Lilo and Stitch, all of those things I'm pretty sure are Bob Scanaway.
Yeah, Bob Scanaway.
Yeah, and also he was one of the writers for Cats Don't Dance as well, which was how he knew Mark Denville.
Yeah. One thing if this was it might have been in the Sweatbox, but I forgot, is that they were going to have Kuzco have a girlfriend.
I don't think they mentioned that in the Sweatbox. The only love interest mentioned in the Sweatbox is the love interest from when it was Kingdom, who was for the Wilson pod show.
Yeah.
There's an entire middle. So the movies really was 3 different movies, not 2 different movies. There was an entire midpoint where it was Kingdom in the Sun, and during that, one of the characters was a love interest for Cusco, voiced by Laura Prepon of that 70s show.
Was that from like bonus features or something like that?
That was from the internet. I just found that out from the internet.
Oh, you just had it from the internet.
Yeah, and I found I think one of the animators, Sandro Clouseau. I don't know if I'm saying the name right. Except I know that I must be saying the Clouseau right, because on their website they have a little version of them that's like Inspector Clouseau. On like their website and their social media posted a bunch of drawings from that phase of the movie, including lots of her and the Adam West character. So that's where I got those from.
That was interesting.
And
I never heard that
as well of her was from I think a Facebook post at one point or something.
There was a character named Mochi, right?
Mochi, which is actually the name of a whole other civilization, I believe. Pre-Inca, I think, civilization, which may be where they got the name from.
Well, that would make sense because it's supposed to be in Peru.
Yeah, it's in Peru, and the names are more just random Peruvian words than they are actual names that would have been used at the time. So it tracks.
Yeah, I do think that
Cusco is a city.
Yeah, I do think that that's the difference. If it was made today, that you would have a Latino cast.
You would have a Latino cast, and they probably would have more accurate names to what. I don't know exactly what names were popular at that time. Except Manco was a real name. Like there was an actual emperor named Manco, I believe, which was what Cusco's name was going to be. And I don't reveal this in the documentary because I'm not sure that it's going to get a lot of reach over there. But apparently, according to David Spade in the Sweatbox, well, the real reason they changed the name was because Manco or the reason he says Manco in Japanese. Am I allowed to say naughty language on here?
We usually try to keep it pretty family friendly,
okay,
but yeah,
something inappropriate.
Okay, right.
But he says that's not what bothered him. It means bad movie in Turkish.
Interesting. Yeah, it was nice that you were able to find the At the Movies clip.
Yeah, I found that on YouTube just by searching for it. But yeah, it was nice. I was looking for reviews, and that was the only one I could find. I wanted to have a montage and not
Yeah.
just use the whole section of that review, but I couldn't find any other, so I just used the whole section of that review.
Well, I mean, if you're looking for reviews, that's the one you want is Ebert. I mean, he
Yeah.
is the best. So that was fun, I thought.
Yeah. And
Was
I think I got the idea to do that from, I think they showed a clip from his review of Beauty and the Beast in Waking Sleeping Beauty, I believe,
mm,
which was a bit of an influence. This has much more talking heads than that movie does, but it did influence me a bit to use like art, mostly archival footage and stuff.
hmm was there anything else, any other section that kind of stood out to you, Stanford?
In the documentary,
Yeah.
again, I was really wowed by all of the interviews that you were able to compile, Micah.
Yeah.
For me, it was fascinating to be reminded about the kingdom of the sun, number one, and just because the history I'd become aware of over time, and I thought that you did a really wonderful job about explaining what happened there. And I also the franchise stuff was interesting to me because again, I was aware of the TV show and aware of the sequel, but I just really like how you framed it, Mike, how you put it together,
Yeah.
and it explained it all. I remember, just as you asked me earlier, Rach, I had remember watching some episodes of it, and I didn't hate it, but I don't remember watching a lot. I don't remember. I didn't. It wasn't one of those I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so horrible or something. I thought that they captured some of the fun and zaniness of it. It seemed like kind of a weird context, but then also I wasn't the target audience. So
we'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies merch store.
Are you looking for that perfect gift for the postable, Hardy, or Hallmarky in your life?
What about getting that t-shirt or hoodie that will help you stand out at your next holiday party?
Now is the time to check out the Hallmarkies merch store.
Full of festive designs by artists like Jessica Miller, Carrie from Hallmark Comics, and more.
You can even have more than just shirts, but totes, cell phone cases, notebooks, mugs, and more.
And it isn't just Hallmark. We have designs for Anna Green Gables, Man from Snowy River, The Nanny, and more.
Every purchase at the merch store goes to help support the podcast and allows us to make the great content you know and love.
There are frequent sales, so go to tpublic.com/stores/hallmarkies or see the link in the description.
That's tpublic.com/stores/hallmarkies.
There were two parts that fascinated me. One, I never really thought about the fact that Road to El Dorado was meant to be competition from DreamWorks for Emperor's New Groove.
Yeah, it's not 100% confirmed, but there's definitely lots of speculation that that is the case.
Yeah, it makes sense to me because DreamWorks was very samey at that time to Disney, and especially if you think about what Kingdom of the Sun was trying to be, it makes more sense.
Yeah, Katzenberg left Disney like right around the time they were Kingdom of the Sun as well.
Yeah, so that was interesting, I thought. And also the whole section, I think it was Steven Anderson who was talking about how they picked 102 Dalmatians over Emperor's New Groove, and he's like, why couldn't they just market both? And
yes,
I think that we've seen that a lot with Disney. I mean, you see something like Strange World or Raya or some of these movies that they just kind of let drop, and you can just tell that they don't really care that much about them. They don't like them, that they like predestined them to be a flop. And especially these days compared to back then, but these days where it's not like you have to pay for, hundreds of $1,000s of media, media marketing. And so it's like more of a real risk of like, where are we going to invest our money when you can basically for free, you can advertise for very, very, very little. You can advertise. So I guess I always feel like, why not? I mean, they're like, if my friends told me that, and I was in the parks in September, but then my friends were telling me that even closer to the release of Strange World in the Disney parks, there was almost nothing about Strange World in the Disney parks. And you would think, at least in your own parks. You know, you would be, and especially a movie like Strange World, where it would be so easy to have all kinds of, you know, green food
Even
and things like that.
they don't have them as much over here in the States now, but even when Emperor's New Groove first came out, they had like, you know, costume characters and stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And I even remember they had Chicken Little characters.
And they had a giant inflatable chicken.
Yeah, they had an inflatable.
Yeah.
There in Disney World, right?
I think they promoted that movie a lot, actually.
Yeah, and it's just like, why not? Even if you don't think it's that good, I mean, is it really? I don't know. I just figure, like, I guess maybe I'm like more greedy than they are, because I would be like, I want to make as much money as humanly possible out of our project.
Well, you know, you want people to see the thing you made.
Yeah.
Yes.
Even if you don't think it's the best, why not promote it as much as you can, especially in this world where it's basically free.
Now I feel like a lot more people remember The Emperor's New Groove than 102 Dalmatians, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah. 102 Dalmatians is just like forgotten, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that the Dalmatian movies, they're kind of the tail end of that era where everybody was trying to be Home Alone. Like, if you made a live action family comedy, it had to involve pratfalls and you know, these kinds of things.
There was
for
a
like
little bit of that in the animated one, but not a whole lot.
in the not much. I mean, actually, in the animated 101 Dalmatians, Cruella's not in it that much.
No, it's mostly Horace and Jasper are the main threat for most of the movie.
They bring her in just enough to.
She's like in the shadows for most of it, basically.
Yeah. And I
think
think
saw that in theaters in a theater recently.
Oh, lucky. I would love to see that.
They're doing a Disney series this year, which they took them forever to get the okay to do from Disney at the local theater to show their animated movies. Because apparently they're really hard to work with when it comes to screening their animated stuff.
Yeah. But I heard that somewhere, I don't know, it might be fake news, but I heard that Bob Iger was changing some of that, making it a little bit, but
maybe.
Yeah, they're sort of notorious for, especially the Century Fox movies, not letting them out.
Yeah, the animated stuff for the longest time they just kept locked away in the vault until Disney Plus came.
Right.
Basically. One thing that was really fun about the documentary was writing the narration for it. Because again, I didn't want to just make another Sweatbox. I wanted it to feel different and maybe feel a bit more towards the New Groove side than the Kingdom side. So that was fun.
Yeah, that would be fun. And making it all kind of flow as a documentary. Yeah. I mean, and it's reassuring whenever you see a movie that has good word of mouth. It always makes you feel good that when something's good, it spreads, and that's still possible. I mean, we just saw that with Puss in Boots. It made my heart happy. Because I thought the movie was so excellent.
Yeah.
And to see people just talk about it, and it's still, I think this week it was still in the top 5. This last weekend.
I think it was still in the top 5.
Yeah, it just came on Blu-ray and it's still playing in theaters at the same time. So that means when you know the movie's doing really well.
It's really great.
Yeah.
I remember Frozen and Zootopia both had that where they came out on video, but were still showing in the theaters at the same time.
That's true. Frozen had such a long run.
Yeah.
Because I think it opened like okay. I mean, expected, but not like amazing. And then it just was there until like it opened at Thanksgiving, and then I think was still in the top of the box.
Like a year or something.
Yeah, it was a long time. It was a long time that it was in the top 10. But yeah, it was nice to see that this had this good word of mouth, because I remember seeing it, and like I said, in that theater with the Lost Boys, and just being like, what? I can't believe this is that good.
Yeah. And then as touched on in the documentary, a big reason, as we were just saying, they pushed 102 Dalmatians. One reason for that was they just didn't know how to sell, I guess they didn't know how to sell the wacky comedy aspect of it. So a lot of people didn't know what the movie was when they did see ads for it. And so it kind of looked like more like a dumb kids movie than the sharp comedy that it actually is.
And then it became the #1 video in 2001 for Disney.
Yep. And that's why they made a sequel and a TV series.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, that was the era when for some reason, all Disney videos needed that extra bubble wrap protection case. They had to be treated extra careful. But yeah, so you watched the show.
Yes.
And I was curious, but that was interesting. And they had like the David Spade imitator, which is kind of interesting.
And he got to start with that particular character doing the voice for the video game, which came out was released about the same time or shortly before the original movie. So he'd been doing it for like 6 years or so by the time the TV show came along. I mean, he had experience because he was also in House of Mouse. A few episodes of House of Mouse had Cusco in them, and that was him. He did tell me recently that on the podcast that apparently they told him he's not going to be voicing Cusco anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that's kind of sad. Especially for him, I would imagine. He had but now he's like part of the legacy, so he's still permanently like ingrained in the legacy of the franchise. That's still cool.
Yeah, I can't remember what it's called. At D23, I went to a panel for the voice actors, and they have, I can't remember what the organization is, but they have a whole Disney voice actor archives kind of. There's a name for it. I can't think of what it is. But and basically what they do is that they have the original voice and then they have the sound alikes all organized, because originally it was just like completely random, and there was just all these different voices voicing Mickey, all these different voices, and it sounded really different depending on who was doing it. And so, but now they have it all organized, so they basically have like, this is the original, this is the sound alike, and kind of going downward to the most sound alike, the least sound alike kind of a thing, for like so that way everybody, if you were working in toys, if you're working in TV, if you're working in the movies, anything, you were going to have it to sound as close to the original as possible.
Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting that they had that.
That is interesting.
Yeah. Because you don't want to get like a toy and it be this like totally different voice.
No.
Right.
I do like that. According to if you consider the Buzz TV series to be a canon cartoon in Toy Story, then Patrick Warburton is actually the big A-list, the big voice actor, and the guy they get to do all the voice work for the toys is Tim Allen.
And isn't Patrick Warburton just the best?
So funny.
Yeah.
Kronk, I mean, we talked a little bit about it. Kronk is such a fantastic character, and just funny every time.
And probably the most consistent in the entire franchise, I think.
Yes. Agreed.
Was this one of his, was this kind of his breakout role?
For voice acting, I think this and maybe Family Guy, but I don't remember if the Family Guy episode that Joe debuted in came first or if this came first.
Oh, interesting. Let me see.
It might have been 90. Family Guy premiered in 99. I don't remember how early on that episode where Joe showed up is.
Oh yeah. So yeah, he was on Family Guy starting in 1999. I guess it says 1999 present.
Yeah, Family Guy was the first voice acting role that I know of that he had, and I think this was his second. And right as of now, they're both probably equally his most famous characters.
Yeah, he's been on 273 episodes.
Now, so.
Oh, Family Guy. I didn't realize that. I mean, I've never watched the show, so
Oh, yeah.
I've only watched it once. Was the crossover between Family Guy and Simpsons? I watched that,
Yeah.
but that's the only time I've watched it. And
Yeah.
I thought this was far better.
And he was Brock Sampson on Venture Brothers. And of course, he got his big breakout was on Seinfeld, which is how he got the role of Kronk. And by getting the role of Kronk, he ended up the Disney. Some people at Imagineering saw him in his role as Kronk, and they hired him to do the pre-show for Soarin'.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because apparently they had wanted to get John Travolta for that, but there were scheduling conflicts. So they got Patrick Wilbur instead. And honestly, I prefer it that way.
Yeah.
Yep.
He still is in that intro.
Yeah.
That's true.
I hope they never take that part out.
I know. Me too. Me too. I wish they'd go back though to the Soarin' over California.
Yeah. For a while, it seemed
It was
like
better.
like a little while ago, I think they briefly brought it back. So maybe that will just become like an event of some kind where they just bring it back every once in a while.
Yeah, I wish they would bring it back, just because also it's nice when Disneyland Park and Disney World have separate identities, when they're not like exactly the same.
Because Soarin' Over the World fits better in Epcot, and Soarin' Over California fits better in Disney California Adventure.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, now there were multiple seasons of this Emperor's New School.
Yeah, there were 2 seasons.
2 seasons, okay. Was it on like the Disney Afternoon, or was that after?
Oh no, this was good. Well, quite a bit after that. It was
Okay.
Just on Disney Channel. And,
It was on Disney
ABC.
Channel. Yeah.
And
Okay.
Toon Disney as well.
Because that's like my biggest gap is Disney Channel material from or DComs, because I was going to college when they were at their heyday. So
in terms of DComs and like the live action sitcoms, you didn't miss anything.
Yeah.
I hear ya.
Disney's strengths have always been with their cartoons, I feel.
They have some. I mean, I feel like they're overhated sometimes, the DComs, but a lot of the sort of quote unquote classics of the genre I still haven't seen, because in their heyday I wasn't watching them. I was in college.
Like, there's a few good Disney live action, big Disney movies, like the first Pirates. But most of my favorite live action Disney movies also have animation in them.
Oh, like Mary Poppins.
Like Mary Poppins, Who Framed Roger Rabbit is like a big one.
Yeah.
I liked Enchanted.
Yeah.
Like those kinds of movies.
Yeah. Those are good.
Micah, did you have any like key learnings, or I'm trying to think of this, that's kind of business jargon, but anything that really stood out to you that was new to you as you were putting together this documentary?
Some of the information about the TV show was new to me, because there's not a lot of that online, because it isn't as big as the movie is, which is another reason why it's part of the focus.
Yeah.
Try to get a little bit more, like, I wouldn't say it's like on the same level as the movie, but it's still, there's good stuff in there that I think could use some attention. So most of the stuff, or not most of the stuff, but a good chunk of like the stuff about the pitch for that, stuff like that, so the images you see that were made for the pitch, as far as I know, outside of the people who work for Disney, I don't know if anyone had ever seen those before. I don't know if they've been publicly shown to anyone before. That was neat. There's not much else I can think of at the moment.
Yeah, that was really interesting to know that Earth Kit won 2 Emmys for it.
Daytime Emmys, yeah.
Yeah.
And she played that character till she could no longer play any character.
Yeah.
Because she loved playing the character in the movie so much, so whenever they needed Yzma again, they got her back. And you can't replace her. There are people who say they shouldn't do anything else because you can't replace her. The camera's like, I don't first of all, I don't see it as replacing anyways. I think that's kind of a rude way to put it. But I feel like I think Candy Milo, who has done the voice for some theme park stuff, does a really good Yzma voice. And I think Eartha Kitt would want them to continue to make stuff with Yzma even past her, you know. Of course, I don't know for sure because there's no way to know. But
well, the thing is I don't trust Disney now. They'd give like Yzma this sympathetic backstory and try to make her like misunderstood.
Yeah.
And poor Yzma.
Yeah.
Well, and the TV show art, like it made it very clear she was still evil, but the TV show did give her like, so it turns out her mother's still alive in the TV show. And
Yeah.
it's very old, obviously.
Wow.
And a big push for her various schemes is her mother wanting her to be empress, basically. So that's the closest really and apparently so she's a good character to make just in that middle section where she has enough sympathetic backstory where you like feel for her, but you also don't like, she doesn't lose that evilness, you know.
Yeah.
They sort of did a good job of that, and I feel like if they tried to do like a Maleficent thing, they would take it too far, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, if Disney feels like they can they can turn Cruella de Vil into a heroine, they will have no shame in if you can kill 100 puppies and still be hero material, then
yeah, that's and these villain movies and remakes make me really sad that I don't work for Disney because I have an idea for the only way I think it could be done justice, that kind of thing could be done justice with the Emperor's New Groove.
I just feel like now all the characters are the same.
Yeah.
They're all it's either the surprise villain or no villain, or this like sympathetic thing. And so it's just kind of boring. I miss good, fun, dishy Disney villains.
Yeah, the last one, and he was barely in the movie, was Tamatoa. But really enjoyed, but again, barely in the movie.
Barely, yeah. I mean, that was so another thing refreshing about Puss in Boots is you had this really scary villain. Like the kids that when that wolf comes on screen, the kids in my audience were like genuinely terrified.
I still need to see that. I think it comes on Peacock next week, so I'm gonna check it out then.
Yeah, it's so good. But yeah, especially a little girl sitting next to me was just like,
yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's so refreshing. We need it. We need that more.
The problem is Disney seems to have gotten this idea where they need to have a phase where they only do one thing. So like it's the villain is a twist. The villain is whereas, you know, and that's the thing about the 2000s is even like if the movies weren't always the best, none of them felt like they were the same as the others, basically.
Yeah, that's true.
Everything was different in that era. And I feel like they're starting to get away with that and starting to try to do formulas again, and I feel like that's not as fun.
Yeah, that's true. Well, we like to finish off by hearing, we asked you to come with your top 5 Disney movies list. So, and we can kind of share some of our favorites too as we were talking, but why don't you share your number 5 with us?
All right. So I thought about this for a while and I decided there's 7 eras, so a couple of them are going to be left out, but I wanted each one to be from a different era because I thought that would be neat. And I don't have like a specific tier list other than the number 1. So number 5 is Fantasia.
That's the same as me. It's also my number 5.
Yeah, because I don't even think it like, and I don't mean this as like an insult. I mean this as like a good thing. I don't think it's a movie. I think it's more like a concert with images.
Yeah.
Which I think is also probably why people didn't really get it when it first came out. Was that it wasn't trying to be a movie. It was trying to be like a new thing. So that's my number 5. Number 4 is 101 Dalmatians. which added again because I've seen it very recently, so I have it fresh in my mind.
That's my number 6. Do you know Stanford off the top of your head? What your number 5
it's number 8. It's number 8 for me. 101 Dalmatians. So definitely in my top 10. It's one I adore.
What's your number 5?
My number 5 is Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good one. So you said 101 Dalmatians is your number 4.
Yeah.
My number 4 is Cinderella.
And my number 4 is Peter Pan.
Oh.
Yeah. What do you think, Stanford, did you see the Peter Pan and Wendy trailer?
I did. And I'm just I'm hopeful. I mean, maybe skeptical, but it's in the hands of such a good director.
Yeah, that's what gives me hope too.
Yeah. And it didn't look shot for shot.
Yeah, exactly what I was gonna say. With Pete's Dragon, he did his own thing. It had an invisible dragon. That was really the only
common
similarity
element
between the kid named Pete. But it was very different, and so I'm hoping that will be the case with this as well.
Yeah,
with David Lowery. Did you see that trailer?
Did I see the trailer? Yeah.
What do you think?
It doesn't look bad, I'll say
that. That's all we can hope for.
We all have the same reaction.
All right. Well, what's your number 3?
Number 3. Trying to remember. The Lion King.
Okay. Good.
And that's a very close to me movie because that was the movie that came out the year I was born. And my mom, I was in the theater. It's another movie I actually saw in the theater technically for the first time recently for this retro series. But I technically was in the theater when it came out, but there was, my mom, I was inside my mom.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people, that was a very formative Disney, or just a very formative movie period for them. It's a great film. I have it at 8, so I really enjoyed that. So it's a good number 3. My number 3 is Tangled.
Ooh.
Yeah, I love Tangled. I love Mother Gothel. I love how they use like motherhood to manipulate and control. Like, that's so creepy. Yeah. And I really like the songs, especially Mother Knows Best. I think it's great. And I think it's the first real romantic comedy from Disney, where you have the banter between Flynn and Rapunzel throughout the movie in a way that you don't have in that many others, except for maybe Aladdin.
Yeah.
But what's your number 3, Stanford?
It's Cinderella.
So good. So good. All right. Well, what's your number 2?
My number 2 is and this one is not in chronological order anymore. Moana.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah.
I just think it's a really good movie. What I love about, and this is in contrast to my number 1, it feels just the perfect amount of Disney for me. Like it's formulaic, but not in a way that but in a, because sometimes you want to see things that remind you of other things that are familiar to you. So it's it does all that in a good way, I feel.
Yeah. I have it at 11, so I really enjoy it as well. Great songs, incredible. Leigh Carvalho was such a find. It is such a beautiful voice.
Yeah, Moana is a beautiful
movie.
Of
course, I think Tamatoa is really funny. So
yeah. So I basically have a co number 1. They go back and forth. I love them both equally. Is Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast. I flip back and forth sometimes.
Those are both good ones. Yeah.
I love them both so much.
So good.
And Little Mermaid has the most nostalgia for me. It was the first movie I ever really loved. I saw it when I was 8. And when something impacts you when you're that young, it's really special. But I also have a lot of nostalgia for Beauty and the Beast as well. And especially when you consider, Howard Ashman writing it on his deathbed. I mean, it adds I think a layer to everything about the story, and beauty is found within, and all of that. It's really, really lovely. And so that's my number 2 and 1. Spoiler alert. But what's your number 2, Stanford?
The Jungle Book. That's just
okay.
sentimental favorite from my childhood. I don't exactly remember when I saw it for the first time, but I remember I had the book. I had this little record that I could play that anyway. And the report I get from my older siblings is that I played the soundtrack nonstop.
Yeah.
And I don't think that made them happy. but I liked it.
That was the same with me with Little Mermaid. Ask my
question.
brother.
Am I allowed to do an honorable mention?
Sure.
Oh,
Yeah.
for sure.
Honorable mention goes to Lilo and Stitch.
Mhm.
When I saw that as a kid, at one point when I was much younger, I was very obsessed with that movie. But looking back on it, it's just a really solid film.
Yeah, I did not care for it when it first came out. It was a little too traumatic for me.
Yeah.
But
Another
I
film
have grown to appreciate it more over the years, I
Yeah.
have to say.
It though it ended up being like their biggest hit of that particular decade, the marketing for that movie was completely different from what the actual movie was.
Yeah, that's true. That's true too. All right. Let's see. So you already said your number 2, right, Stanford?
Yes, Jungle Book.
Okay, yeah, Jungle Book. Okay, well, let's share I already said my number 1, and Beauty and the Beast, and yours, I assume, is Emperor's New Groove, correct? Yes. Very good. And yours, Stanford?
Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah. And did you get to see the 30th anniversary concert thing they did?
I
with Micah?
did. It's
so
so
good.
good. Rachel, you're the one I think encouraged me to finally watch it. I wasn't putting it off necessarily. I just I didn't watch it. And anyway, it's terrific.
Yeah, it was so good. I loved it. So
just the kind of tribute that you'd hope for, for that kind of a beloved movie.
Much better, I imagine, than the 2017 movie.
No question.
I
hope I never have to watch that movie.
About that ever again. One and done.
But Micah, so tell everybody where they can watch the documentary and where they can find your podcast, all the stuff. How do they connect with you?
The podcast is The Emperor's New Podcast, and it's basically pretty much wherever you find podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, etc. The movie's called Beware the Groove, the making of a cult classic. It's on YouTube, and the YouTube channel is The Emperor's New Podcast YouTube channel. On Twitter, I have 2 accounts. I have @Micah Hirsh, and then I have an account for the podcast and promoting the documentary, which is @podcastTENP on Twitter.
We'll have all that information in the description. So congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations, Micah. I just, watching your documentary, I just thought this is so wonderful that you put it together. You did it yourself. What a wonderful accomplishment. Way to go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, Stanford, how can people find you?
On Twitter, I'm @Stanford Clark, and I have a movie podcast and blog at moviespastandpresent.com.
Great. And you can find us at Disney Talking on Twitter. And also you can find me, Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. Check that out. And also you can find me at the Hallmarkies Podcast. And I'm going to be going to South by Southwest next week, and that should be super fun. And I'm going to be covering it for Rotoscopers, so I'm going to try to be finding any animation that's there to try to cover. But anyway, check out that for all that coverage. And thanks again, Micah. Really appreciate it. And we'll talk to y'all later. Bye, everyone.